Take 100. Hi. I don't know about all of you, but I've had a strange week. Where I live, there's a global pandemic happening, and it's really affected a lot of things. And obviously I'm being sarcastic, but I keep having these like moments where I'm like, is this real? I'm in my garage. I've set up this lovely blanket backdrop and a couple lights. And to be honest, my goal was to create some sense of normalcy, to do a leadership mini lesson like I would typically do in my class. And the reality is there's nothing normal about this. The fact that I can't like go outside and be around people is so hard for me. And I'm sure it's difficult for many of you. It's not difficult for my son. Tate was wearing, like literally our first day when he should have had school, he came out of his room in a robe. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, you better get used to this, Dad. You're gonna be seeing a lot of this over the next few weeks. And he has been true to his word. He has worn a robe nonstop every day. I've been reminded lately of my senior year in high school, and particularly 9/11, and I'm not trying to create a false parallel, but I just graduated high school. I was going to a junior college, and I remember waking up on the morning of September 11th to my dad. He came in my room and said that Melissa, who's now my wife, was on the phone. And I remember talking to her, and she was worried. Immediately after, my best friend Charlie called me. He kind of got me up to speed, and we actually went to class as normal. And the funny thing is that morning we had bowling class, which was a class, it probably still is a class at DVC. It was my PE in college. And I remember driving to bowling class just uncertain. At that point, the towers hadn't fallen yet. I could be wrong on my history, but there was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know who had done what. We didn't know how imminent the threat was. It was a lot of fear. Got to the bowling alley, and my teacher, she was acting like business as usual. She was trying to go about her normal routine, her normal life. In fact, like she somehow took bowling and made it stressful and not fun. And not just because of that day. Anyway, back to bowling. So we get to bowling class, all the TVs in the bowling alley, and this was like 8 in the morning. You should never bowl at 8 in the morning. But all the TVs were on. My wife was in the class, Charlie was in the class, and some other friends. So we're all together in this class, experiencing the same thing on the TV screens, and we were freaked out. It was so strange. Charlie and I actually left. We're like, forget this. And our teacher literally told us, like, you're not gonna get credit for today. And we're like, I think we'll be fine. So we leave. My wife stays because she was a good student. Good to the point of it's September 11th and I'm gonna stay in class. That's how good of a student she was. But I remember driving home, Charlie and I were like, we were so uncertain about our future that we're like, are we gonna get drafted in the military? Like, what's next? And I remember that fear and that uncertainty. And very little of it had to do with what was happening in the moment, and a lot of it had to do with what was next. And unsure of what came after that day. Like, I started my day bowling, and I went bowling. That's still so weird to me. Anyway, I got into bed that night, and I was shaken. I was shook. Did I use that right? When I still use my dad jokes, okay. I actually took out this notebook, and I knew I had it. I knew I had it around. I actually tore through my garage this week looking for it. And I want to read to you what I wrote that night. I wasn't like a big journaler, but I did write a little bit. And I wrote at the top, I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it. It says chapter 2 of Dan's life is what I wrote at the top. This was written on September 11th, 2001 at 11:45 p.m. It says, today is a day unlike any other I've experienced. I've heard it described as surreal, and I would have to say that's the best I've heard it put. Today, the World Trade Center was crashed into by 2 separate 747 and 757s. I watched live on TV as they collapsed to the ground, killing thousands. The Pentagon was hit as well. Dad woke me up at 7:01 to tell me Charlie and Melissa were both on the phone. I asked him what was wrong, and he said the U.S. was under attack. This is all so crazy. It's like, as I'm writing, I just know someday my grandchildren will be reading about this event in school, and I'll show them this journal. You're not my grandchildren. They have described this event as our Pearl Harbor. It's so eerie. Amy and Joel Flory are stuck in Greece, 2 friends of mine. Because for the first time in history, the US has shut down all flights in and out. They showed on the news one of the last planes landing, one of the last commercial airliners landing, and it had 2 F-16s escorting it, telling the commercial plane if it deviated off course even a little bit, it would be shot down. The mall was closed today, airports. The A's game was canceled. All MLB games, in fact. I love how I put that in priority. Baseball, now I know it's serious. Starbucks was closed, all of it. I only went to my first class and came home and watched the news. Mel is pretty shaken up. This is all so terrible. It does make me realize how grateful I am, though. I've told my parents I love them today a bunch of times. The news reported that even as I write this, there are people in the basement of the World Trade Center on their cell phones calling for help. There's still people alive. The military is on DEFCON 4 alert. I wrote that as though I knew what it was. I still don't know what that is, but it sounds important. And Lawrence Livermore Lab and other local high danger facilities have been evacuated. I'm writing so fast, and I put 5 O's for emphasis. They think it's a terrorist group led by Ben Laden. I wrote his name Ben, like Benjamin. Anyway, I just heard a jet outside my window. It was really loud and it startled me. It was quick too. My parents heard it as well. I still can't believe all of this. Every channel on TV from ESPN to MTV had news coverage on hundreds of firefighters have been lost. My dad was a firefighter, so that one definitely hit me. They have aircraft carriers now in New York, guarding with 5 other battleships. This is so scary. My mom showed me a Bible verse just now, and it said, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you if you make the Lord your dwelling. I pray that my family stays safe, and Mel and her family stays safe, and my friends stay safe. And everyone involved, I pray that they're protected. I hope I'm strong and willing to follow whatever needs to be done. If it's going to war or wherever, I hope I have the confidence and strength to go. I'm thankful for my family and Melissa. I just hope I can have peace and that our nation can be healed. And it's funny because I remember writing this. I remember writing in my bed and just being scared. And again, like I said, it wasn't just scared of what was happening in the moment, it was scared of what's next. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I feel like in the conversations I've had with many of the students over the past week, it's kind of been that. It's that sense of what's next? What happens with college? What happens with these classes that I haven't finished yet? There's a sport I've been playing since I was 4, and is it gone? Has it been taken away from me? I feel like we all have some version of that story. In the midst of all of this, I remember the thing that got me through that really uncertain period of my life was focusing on and trying to identify the things I could control and the things I couldn't control. And I feel like that's the big parallel to now. I wish I could tell you that all these events that you've worked so hard, putting time, effort, energy, creativity, I wish I could tell you all those events would happen, and I honestly don't know. And so my challenge to you is to focus on what you can control and what you can't control. I'm gonna put a little assignment in the description down below. First thing I want you to do is make a list of all the things you can control. And it might not be a long list, but I want you to write those down. Your attitude, the way you treat people, the texts you can send to people, that maybe even writing a physical letter that you sanitize first. What are the things you can control? And then I want you to make a list of, especially if you're someone who is a control person, maybe this will be a longer list, but what are the things that you're worried about but you can't control right now? So what can you control and what can't you control? The last thing I want you to do is this. I want you to get a journal. It could be a piece of paper. It could be anything that you can write on. And I want you to write something. It could be a journal entry. It could be a prayer. It could be a letter to your future self. It could be a letter to your kids. It could be a letter to your grandkids. And I want you to write it out because I'm confident you're gonna come through this. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I think there will be an other side of this where 20 years later, however many, I can't do the math, I think it's 19 years later, you can do what I did, where you go up into your attic or whatever it is, and you have your 12-year-old kid and your 10-year-old kid and your 5-year-old kid safe in your house, and your spouse who you love. I mean, that may be not what you have, but I'm in such a different place now than the scared kid who wrote this. And you can pull this out and hopefully read it on the other side of whatever it is you're going through now. Because right now, we're all going through pretty much the same thing and experiencing it differently. And so for me reading this yesterday, it was comforting to know that I got through it. I got through that fear and I got through that uncertainty. And the perspective has allowed me to understand that although I can't control a lot right now, what I can control is the way I interact with my wife, the way I interact with my kids and my friends and the people I FaceTime, and not letting the fear and the uncertainty and the things I can't control overwhelm me. So make that list of the things you can control. Make that list of the things you can't control, and then write out your thoughts. I'm not gonna read it, it's just for you, but hopefully that will be an encouragement to you eventually. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to connecting after this, and be safe.
What are you taking a picture of?
I'm proud of you for doing your chores. Oh, gross.